Hi, everyone. Thanks for listening to the TV Confidential podcast. If you like what you hear, please consider subscribing to the TV Confidential podcast, or better yet, give us a review on Apple Podcasts, Podchaser, or wherever you listen to our podcast.
Hi, this is Louise Schaefer, and you are listening to TV Confidential.
Ed Robertson welcoming you back to TV Confidential Radio Talk Show about television. And we'll shift gears this segment as we welcome back our friend Steve Randisi. Steve's books on movies and television include The Merv Griffin Show, The Inside Story, a complete history of the Merv Griffin Show on television, and Behind the Crimson Cape, a look at the movie career of George Reeves. Steve's latest book chronicles the life and career of Penny Singleton. Penny Singleton, the actress who achieved worldwide fame in the 30s and 40s as the star of the Blondie movie series from Columbia Pictures, based on the popular comic strip, of course, by Chick Young, and later to television audiences, 3 generations of television audiences, as the voice of Jane Jetson in the original Jetsons animated series, and later the Jetsons movie. Steve's biography of Penny Singleton draws on exclusive interviews with Penny Singleton herself, as well as many members of her families. That makes it rare among movie star biographies. Today we'll talk to Steve about that and more in just a second. Steve Randisi, welcome back to our program.
Thank you, Ed. The last time we talked, the topic was Merv Griffin, and now we're going to talk about Penny Singleton, a.k.a. Blondie.
And there's a connection between Merv and Blondie in the sense that, or at least there's a connection between Merv and Penny Singleton in that, I don't remember which movie, but she and Arthur Treacher worked together very, very early in her movie career.
Well, I know that Penny worked with Arthur Treacher on the stage. He was in one of those early stage shows that she did for the Schuberts. I don't know if it was Good News. Excuse me, not Good News, The Great Temptations. So she worked with Treacher. There's no direct connection between Merv Griffin and Penny Singleton because Penny did not like talk shows. Mm-hmm. I asked her, when she was involved with the unions and her name was in the papers and there was a lot of controversy going on with her, I said, how come you never talked about any of this on any of the network chat shows? And she felt that there was a great inequity with talk shows because the hosts of these programs made millions. And under the AFTRA rules that were in effect at the time, a talk show guest only got union scale, which was anywhere from $265 to $320. So her position was, I'm not going to go on television and, only get paid a pittance while these guys are making these large sums of money. She liked Merv Griffin, but she didn't like the concept of these talk shows and how they were set up.
Well, a couple of things, and we'll get into this a little later on in the conversation. She was never afraid to assert herself. That's a good quality to have when you're going to be not only the head of a major union like the AFL-CIO, but be a pioneer and that be the first woman to lead a union. Right. But she practiced what she preached. I mean, that made her, and so she was not hypocritical in her approach, which is one reason why she survived for 20 years as head of a major union.
That was AGBA. That was the American Guild of Variety Artists. That was a union.
Okay.
It was an AFL-CIO union.
Okay. First president of AGBA, the American Guild of Variety Artists. I stand corrected. One of the benefits of talking to someone like Steve is that if I blur some facts in my attempt to ask the question, Steve is kind enough to make sure that we get this right. You picked up on one of my questions. One of the things that makes your book unusual is you happen to meet Penny at a very fortuitous time because you happen to meet her, if I remember the story correctly, around the time when she herself was thinking about writing a book about her life.
Actually, I met her before that, a couple of years before that. I met her in the early 80s. And beginning late 70s, early 80s, there were various biographers and columnists and writers that were urging her to write a book. And she had the idea of writing a book. She liked the idea of writing a book. The problem is you could never really get her to sit down and do it seriously. I did attempt to try that with her in 1997. And then because of a series of circumstances, it never happened. But the main problem, and I mentioned this in the book, is she wanted to focus her memoir on the Union years.
Mm-hmm.
And people told her, that's fine, that's an important facet of your career, but you must also include the behind-the-scenes information about the making of your films, especially the Blondie series, because that's what the fans, the people that buy this book are going to be largely movie buffs and Blondie fans. So there was a little bit of not a discrepancy, but a little bit of a disagreement as to what the focus of the book should be. So it never got done. And I think just before the pandemic, I got the idea, this is a story that needs to be told. So I remained friendly with her. I was friendly with Penny for 22 years. And when I got the idea to do the book, I contacted her daughter, and I said, Bear Manor Media is interested in a bio of your mother. Would you approve of this? And she said, sure, and we took it from there. So the book was largely written in 2020 and 2021 during the pandemic when we were all trapped in our homes. So it kept me mentally alert, and it gave me something to do. It kept my mind occupied.
And in many respects, timing is everything. Back when she was first noodling the idea of doing a book on her life, and she ran into look, it's a marketing, it's a practical reality, it's a marketing reality, and I know a little bit about this myself. People such as Penny Singleton, who left their mark in more than one area, they want to focus on what they think is the most important part of their life, the thing that gave them the most most meaning, which in Penny's case was her activism and her years with running the union. Not that she didn't think of her screen career as important, but relatively speaking, what she did with the union she thought had more of a lasting impact on people's lives. But so fast forward to the early 2000s, early 2020s, you find a home with Bear Manor Media, which will give you the room to tell the story that to tell her story the way she wanted it told, while also going behind the scenes of all her movies, which is what the fans want. So it really is. I mean, it took a while for this to come to be, but it's a book that I would think Penny would be happy about if she were with us today.
Yeah. Well, her daughter was happy with it. Her family was happy with it. The book is a hybrid of sorts. It encompasses her growing up, in Philadelphia and making a name for herself in local vaudeville, and then, her stage work, and then her work for the Schuberts and all the shows that she was in, the big shows that were headlines at the time. And then, getting into radio, and then finally motion pictures, and then, the union stuff. She actually, most people didn't know, and I learned a lot in writing this book. I never knew, for example, that she had a recording career, that she made records. And, that came as a surprise. I forget what the label was. It's noted in the book, but, she had a couple of records that were very successful, and nightclub work, too. She was on the nightclub circuit in 52. Before she went over to Korea with Johnny Grant, with a whole plane load of stars who were entertaining the troops just before the end of the Korean War.
On the line with us is Steve Randisi. Steve's latest book, Penny Singleton, a biography, tells you everything you want to know about the life and career of Penny Singleton. Penny Singleton, the first actress to play Blondie on the screen and the voice of Jane Jetson, who also became the first female president of an AFL-CIO union, that being AGBA. Penny Singleton, a biography available through our friends at Bear Manor Media. You can also find it at Amazon.com, where books are sold online. Stay with us, folks. We'll be right back.
This portion of TV Confidential is brought to us by our friends at Front Porch Realty, the community of realtors in the Northern Bay area of California that is committed to finding the solution that is best for their clients. Whether you're a first-time home buyer or looking to sell or lease your property in Northern California, call Karen Strain at 415-886-7411 or visit frontporchrealtygroup.com for more information on how they can help you.
One more item. If you're starting a company, particularly one that is in an emerging market, you know that averting any sort of legal dispute is crucial to your business plan. Our friends at Tectonic Law offer an array of services that can help you avoid and preempt future litigation while also developing and protecting your intellectual property and intangible assets. Tectonic Law serves the needs of a host of emerging industries throughout California and beyond, including industrial designers, beverage makers, artists, farmers, retail stores, health practitioners, wellness experts, cosmetics manufacturers, nonprofit organizations, innovators in sustainable practices, and libraries. Go to tectoniclaw.com to learn more about how Tectonic Law can help your business thrive. tectoniclaw.com. Rock solid representation for groundbreaking industries.
Hi, this is Kathy Garver, and you're listening to TV Confidential.
It's not surprising that she ended up having a recording career, Steve, in the sense that she did sing in some of the Blondie movies, and she was a trained at a very young age. She received operatic training, and that led to her first professional role in the entertainment industry.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, she really ran the gamut, as an entertainer. She was an acrobat. She danced. She sang. She was a comedian. She did punchlines on stage with Jack Benny.
Mm-hmm.
Very, very young. She was in her 20s. And here she is on stage trading quips with Jack Benny in The Great Temptations, which was a mega hit of its day. And it was heralded for being rather spicy, for being rather risque. If you read some of the reviews that I put in the book, a lot of people thought it was a dirty show. In fact, when Jack Benny got the scripts for it, he said, "I'm not going to do this." He said, "This is filthy." That was the Au Calcutta and hair. The shows that later, with nudity and things like that. Now, it wasn't nudity that we would consider nudity today.
Yeah, it was pre-code, pre-production code nudity.
Yeah, this was 1926. In the mid-20s, even before sound movies took hold. So, she had quite a career. And then, her voice, it's not surprising that she would be adept at recording because she had a unique voice that had a perky quality to it. And that was one of the reasons why she later did, the cartoon voice of Jane Jetson. And even though she wasn't the first choice for that role, I think the original choice was Pat Carroll and Maury Amsterdam. They were picked to be George and Jane Jetson, but that didn't work out. So they got George O'Hanlon and Penny to do it. And she was just as proud of having done Jane Jetson as she was of Blondie. Kids would come up to her and say, "Are you Jane Jetson?" Depending on what age you were, there was a boundary in terms of a generational thing, is whether or not kids would know her as Blondie or they would know her as Jane Jetson. I knew her as Blondie, of course.
Yeah.
She was proud of having done both.
Steve Randisi is the author of Penny Singleton, a biography. Everything you want to know about the life and times of the gifted entertainer known around the world as the first actress to bring Blondie to life on the screen and two TV generations, the voice of Jane Jetson. Penny Singleton, a biography, available through our friends at Bear Manor Media. You can also find it Amazon.com, wherever books are sold online. I've spoken to enough actors to know, Steve, that if you work, at the end of the day, all an actor really wants to do is to work steadily and be given consistent opportunities to perform their craft and be paid for it the way anyone else, the way any other gifted artist would want to be paid for it. Whether it's working steadily on the stage or working steadily in the film industry or television industry one way or another. Most actors, they just want to be working actors, but if they're lucky, they have one role for which they are known. Penny had two.
Yes. Yeah. You mentioned Arthur Treacher a minute ago, and we're talking about work ethics and being employed. Arthur Treacher had a very interesting credo when it came to show business. His idea was forget about the glamour of it. Just go in there, say the words, get the money, and go home. So I always thought that was rather amusing, that he took that approach to it. Say the words, get the money, and go home. Forget about show business and the glamour of it and the fame and all that. It was, it was the idea of being employed, as you say, and keeping before the public, working, staying active.
You mentioned Jack Benny a little while ago. That was one of Penny's first big breaks when she and Benny worked together on Broadway in the Great it's the Great Temptations, right?
The Great Temptations, yes, 1926.
You confirmed something that I've come to know about Jack Benny, and Penny said this in one of her comments to you, which is Benny was a very generous performer, even though he was a big star, and he made his living getting people to laugh. He was very generous with the other actors he worked with, whether on stage or whether in movies or on television.
Yes, he was a giving performer. I think the Great Temptations was before Benny got into radio. I'm not sure, but I think Jack Benny got into radio in 1931 or 32. Probably there's somebody out there who's listening to this who will know the date. But Penny did make the observation that, Jack Benny didn't hog the show. He shared the stage with you, and he taught her a few things. He taught her that, you play to the back of the theater so they can hear you, all the way in the back. And she learned a lot about comedy. And it's a cliche, but comedy is a serious business.
Mm-hmm.
And she learned that from Jack Benny. She spoke very highly of Jack Benny, as did a lot of people in the business. So that was one of the milestones of her career. She also worked a lot with Jack Oakey, who was a popular comic actor and got into movies and became a big star. And she worked with a lot of people today whose names are not quite terribly known. I was watching an episode of Bewitched this morning when I got up, and in the cast of this episode from 1966 was J. Pat O'Malley and Ann.
Oh yeah, J. Pat O'Malley was one of the great character actors of in movies and television, particularly in the 50s and 60s.
Right, and Penny worked with both of those people on the stage. And she would talk about these people from time to time. And one of the reasons I think I got on so well with her is that when she would mention names like an actress like Norma Varden, who was a well-known character actress at the time, I knew who she meant, because these people were still working in sitcoms in the 1960s when I was a kid. So I knew who these people were, even though they were names that would not be generally known to the public.
Well, in many respects, Steve, one of the things I like about Penny Singleton, a biography, is that especially when you talk about her early developing years as a performer, in a lot of ways, her personal history as an entertainer kind of coincides with the history of entertainment, because she worked with many actors, some of whom you just mentioned, who went on to leave their mark on stage or in television. One of whom she had a lifelong friendship with Milton Berle.
Oh, well, they went to school together. They got in trouble together. They played hooky together.
Yeah.
And during the years when I knew Penny, she would go over and have lunch at the Friars Club in Beverly Hills, and Berle was the abbot. He was the abbot emeritus of the Friars Club. And he would always come over and sit down and chat with Penny. That's how I got to meet Milton Berle a number of times. They were good friends, and they had a... there's one story in the book that I absolutely love, and that's when he started to tell a story that was a little raunchy, and he used a four-letter word, an expletive. And Penny said, "Now, wait a minute, your mother didn't say that." She said, nice ladies didn't use words like that. And he took the cigar out of his mouth and he said, "Okay, Penny." And then he switched to another story. I mean, put him in his place. So that was the kind of person that Penny was. But no, they went to professional children's school together in New York. And they remained friends for many years. And they were both born the same year, 1908. It's hard to believe that if Penny were alive today, she'd be 116. Can you believe it? And the other thing is Baby Dumpling, Larry Sims, who played Blondie's son, if he were alive today, he'd be 90 years old. Can you believe that? Baby Dumpling is 90 years old. Would be 90.
Would be 90. Steve Randisi's on the line with us. Steve's latest book, Penny Singleton, a biography, available through our friends at Bear Manor Media. We'll take a quick time out. We'll continue our conversation with Steve. We come back on TV Confidential. Hi, everyone. Thanks for listening to the TV Confidential podcast. If you like what you hear, please consider subscribing to the TV Confidential podcast, or better yet, give us a review on Apple Podcasts, Podchaser, or wherever you listen to our podcast.
Now you can get generic Viagra shipped to your door for about $2 a pill. Get the same impact for less. Call Steelman Pills now and get the same blue pill for about $2 a pill. Call now for the 50-pill special and save even more. Plus, get a free bonus.
800-932-2613. 800-932-2613. That's 800-932-2613.